Tonight, a major TV event. Part one of the story of a remote Dutch trading post that would become the armpit of the world. It captured our imagination and held our dreams close to its breasts, gently drowning us in a milky discharge. It is the site of some of mankind's most grandiose achievements, and also our society's most squalid and depraved debaucheries. A history of liberty. Major support for this documentary is brought to you by the Bank of Liberty and the Public Broadcasting Corporation, where our budget is cut every year to pay for more bonds. If you take a look at the microcosm that is Liberty City, millions of people, a collective consciousness but utterly alone in a crowd, a million souls crying out to be heard, piled on top of each other, like kittens in a bag, or wanting to kill each other, or suck from society's teat. It is a city with so much history. It is the history of the modern world, particularly for people who can't use a map. And like sweeping generalizations, a history of decadence, a history of corruption, a history of liberty. On September 4th, 1609, Horatio Humboldt, an English explorer hired by the Dutch to find a new place to sell weed, steered his trusty ship into the mouth of a great river, the Humboldt, which he wrote in his log. It is a strange and fortuitous coincidence that lush future site of commerce coincidentally shares the same name as me, for the locals call it the Humboldt. Honestly.
That being said, looking through contemporary journals, even then, the Humboldt River was a polluted mess. The Chickasaw Indians would shit and piss right in the river. It wasn't safe to swim in. With that knowledge, it makes it much easier to ignore the awful genocide and epic larceny our forefathers committed and talk about big ideas in grandiose terms and hope we get book deals.
Horatio Humboldt had stumbled into the natural harbor that would become the greatest sociological experiment the world had ever seen. To determine if all the people in the world could live together in a single place.
The answer is, of course, no. Liberty City was founded by the Dutch, and all the Dutch cared about was appearing to be purveyors of liberal values. But all they really cared about was pimping women and getting high. They were, in effect, well, I guess the first rappers. They wanted to find a place where they could party and kill people. Knowing this, it does make the act of highway robbery that our forefathers committed with regards to the Dutch a lot easier to forget, and we simply mask it in patriotic foundation myths.
Unlike other cities in the New World, founded to facilitate new forms of religious persecution by lunatics who'd been run out of Europe by liberals, Liberty City was founded not to promote religious intolerance, but instead lead to the central tenet of Western European society, enrich our people's work.
You have to understand, when Europeans arrived, the people that met them were savages. Can you imagine landing in a foreign land and being surrounded by men in loincloths? At the same time, depending on the bubonic plague, or sleeping with the middle of your wife when you're a savage.
Algonquin, Indian, Algon, cool, and for myself, they speak of Congo smash. Slaves around me are working morally upstanding, non-hypocritical Americans, newly free from the tyranny of Europe, time to focus on important things in life, like yelling at their women for buying too much shit in the strip mall.
The new economy was a boom. It was very different from failed Jamestown, where a bunch of incest-loving cannibals consumed each other in an orgiastic fury of self-important nonsense. Although the exact nature of the differences escapes me just at the moment. But regardless, Liberty City gave the white settlers plenty of time to focus on the important things, like getting laid.
The slave craze was huge. It was like waiting for a new iFruit phone to come out. People would line up at the docks and wait in line for days to own their very own person, and then put them online for a higher price. Some dissenters wondered about the moral consequences of a nation founded on genocide, slavery, and theft, but they were quickly imprisoned as being unpatriotic by proto-chicken hawks. Of course, we have very different values now.
That year, all the local indigenous tribes were brought together and paid for what would be the greatest real estate deal in the history of the world. 14,000 acres. They traded beaver skins, a 17th century version of wife swapping, and partied late into the night. But founding a country on getting shit-faced and working slaves was trouble from the start. It hadn't worked for the Greeks, and it wouldn't work for the Dutch. 4,000 miles from home, and no internet connection to read up on soccer scores, the populace became disenchanted. Collins' deep-seated racism and love of 24-hour shopping would begin to prove to be its undoing.
Dial the number on your screen. We'll see you next time on the Serrated Edge. Remember, a knife is something
Once a snotty, smelly germ will fuck you up. That's no way to see the world. When we get helicopter tours, you'll experience the real Liberty City in ways you never thought possible. Enjoy our fun road relaxing ready to roll. But our tours aren't just above ground. Enjoy the man-made beauty of one of Liberty City's incredible underground road tunnels. See Star Junction the way the celebrities do, high as a kite and wobbling all over the place. All of our pilots are tested thoroughly for drinking and drug abuse, but everyone likes to let their hair down once in a while. Higgins Helicopter Tours, a fun, safe adventure in the sky that you and your family will never forget.
Remember this?
Let's go.
It's back this season on CNT. America's next top hooker. Get ready to laugh your guts out. The comedy Drunk Daddy in the Door returns in 2 weeks. You're on CNT. Do you ever fucking go to bed?
Think that'll get into her pants? No way. You need something classy. Super classy. Super classy Dutch limo. Prestige can be purchased and even rented by the hour. Feel like a player or a rich executive who just got a bonus for laying off 10,000 employees. Get exotic. Our limos feature hot tubs, pool tables, pizza ovens, leopard skin, firing ranges, flat surfaces for laying out rails, and jungle swings all on wheels. Super classy. Nail that prom date, personal assistant, or grieving widow in style. Contact Super Classy Touch Limo today.
You're on CNT, the best in comedy, news, drama, and paid programming. Up next, don't miss a chance to find the knife of your dreams on the Serrated Edge. You're watching CNT.
Stopping global warming as fire.
a minority in their own colony. Then, just like today, nobody paid attention to the Dutch and only passed through to get stoned or screw a hooker while pretending that they were going to get a look at pensions and smelly stagnant waterways and wooden shoes. Diversity was troubling, and with diversity comes chaos, as we know to our peril today. Nietzsche said that, and he was so clever he ended up in a lunatic asylum.
Then, leaders began to fear the worst.
They were totally petrified of the Jews showing up.
Firearm, and a pattern for the country was now set in stone. Ignorant, scared xenophobes armed to the teeth trying to protect their borders.
It's always been crazy. What? I'm not racist.
On August 27th, 1664, heavily armed British warships entered the harbor. The colonists signed a petition requesting to be ruled by the British, so they wouldn't have to brush their teeth any longer and could be certain they were better than everyone else. The English quickly renamed New Rotterdam Liberty City, after a generous donation by the Bank of Liberty for sponsorship rights.
Every single place the British population went, the invisible hand of God prepared a space for them by, conveniently exploiting the land.
Colony expanded, and areas were named after heavily inbred members of their Germanic royal family. Broca was named after Sir William Broker III, the king's bastard son, who was conceived by a milkmaid. The region to its north was called Dukes after the word dookie, as the people in the area smelled like shit. The peninsula to the north of that was named Bohan, after Bohan, a Dutch word meaning Dutch word. And the area across the river was dubbed Alderney, after Philip Dean. He was the only person who could tolerate living in a steeple-filled swamp full of industrial wastelands and soccer moms. But things wouldn't be quiet for long.
Pretty soon, the residents of Liberty City began to fight with the British over taxes.
Americans felt, and rightly so, that they shouldn't have to pay any taxes. Let the markets sort it out. Poor people will die, rich people will win. Welcome to progress.
So began the American Revolution, a bloody battle by men and women who wanted to leave the tyranny of England's tax structure that paid for burdensome health care and unnecessary public education.
This was a war agitated by a number of musket companies who knew they would win, whatever the outcome.
And of course, you can still see that rich tradition today. Americans don't want health care or education. No, we want guns and fireworks shows and wars, so politicians can invest in armament companies and clean up. And of course, we want drugs.
Oh, yes, lots of those. Strong ones you take with young co-eds when discussing their thesis, and then begin to rub their thighs while they say, "Didn't I hear you on that documentary?" And you whisper to them until they pass out. But I digress.
The American Revolution was bloody. Soon the French joined in the war to help the struggling American insurgency.
No, they did not.
Yes, they made the war when the British all died laughing at a giant Martian transvestite eating an ice cream cone.
Whatever. We saved their asses in WW2. Get me some freedom fight.
Residents pulled down the statue of King George and melted it into gold chains, gold teeth, and golden toilet seats. The Union Jack was taken down in Liberty City, replaced with the Stars and Stripes, and the newly liberated Americans slavery soon time under the train tracks, servicing men for 3 pence.
You could get your knob slobbed for less than the price of a donut. There was a nation on the up. The politicians were having a field day. You couldn't get them to vote because they were all out having their knobs slobbed.
To keep the country moving forward, the capital of the nation was moved from Liberty City to a malaria swamp on the banks of the Potomac, miles to the south. Thankfully, the politicians moved out of Liberty City, and the stage was set for organized crime and mobs to really make a difference.
The city soon became, well, a microcosm of all the contrasting elements of modern life. Palaces, self-extravagance, squalor, tenements, trannies, men, women, and children crowded together like a nest of cockroaches. Just like the Liberty City of today, only with less rich hedge fund dorks trying to be homeboys.
With tensions rising and civil war on the horizon, Frederico Fitzpatrick planned to head off and teach the South a lesson. But before doing so, he continued his great project to run
Don't miss the return of Fuel Factor.
500. 400. 300. 200. 100.